Hey guys, just now, about like maybe 15 minutes ago, I actually checked out a video by the Stupendous Wave, and it was the video about Birth of the Dragon and about Darth Krayt. But this one came up next as recommended, and it is by Exar. I decided to like check out this video because for those of you guys who have been following me for a while, Exar is one of my favorite characters in Star Wars because when I first learned about him in the Old Republic Galactic Timelines video, his story really caught my attention. How he went from a Jedi who became ambitious and his fall to the dark side, how he tried to build a massive Sith brotherhood and empire, but what led to his downfall and things like that. But still, his story is amazing. And I do remember that he is one of the best lightsaber duelists, and also he was very ambitious with like his learning of the Force, both light and dark. So this one is called Exar, making the case greatest duelist of all time. And again, shout out and credit goes to the Stupendous Wave for the video. And without anything else, let's just jump right into it.
In every arena, whether it is basketball, martial arts, or warfare, the question always echoes, who is the greatest of all time? LeBron, Jordan, Duncan, Kobe, champions with different legacies, different weapons, different eras, and yet all part of the same conversation, the GOAT. But what if we took that debate to a galaxy far, far away? What if we examined the Jedi Order's most righteous defenders, the Sith Empire's darkest monsters, and attempted not to decide the greatest, but to present the case for each of them? Welcome to a brand new series, a galaxy-spanning examination of skill, of power, of legacy, of raw sheer presence with the lightsaber. We will be covering the most iconic names in Star Wars history, the best at the blade, Luke Skywalker, Yoda, Tulak Horde, Darth Bane, Revan, and more. Each video a case file, a profile in galactic greatness, not to hand out a crown, but to give you the evidence so that you can decide who truly belongs on top as the GOAT. The GOAT conversation in Star Wars is far more complex than it looks, and the list of real contenders is shorter than you think, especially when we're talking about lightsaber combat exclusively, because the truth is, the lightsaber wasn't just a weapon, it's a legacy, an extension of the Force, a symbol of the Jedi, the Sith, and everything in between. Elegant, lethal, demanding. This is a weapon that punishes hesitation, that exposes even the slightest flaw in focus or technique. Some Force wielders spend their entire lives simply attempting not to get themselves killed with it. Others treat it like a tool, brute force over technique. But once in a generation, once in a while, something changes. Someone changes the game. They don't just wield the blade, they redefine it. They bend the entire battlefield to their will. They command space, rhythm, and death with every movement. They are the juggernauts, the outliers, the anomalies, the ones who dominate entire areas of combat. And in Star Wars history across thousands of years, through countless Jedi and Sith, only a few have ever risen to that level. Only a few entered the true GOAT conversation. And today we begin this journey with one of the most dangerous Force wielders and duelists of all time. A duelist so supremely confident in his skill that he redesigned the most unstable saber type in history, just to make it even more dangerous, not only to his enemies, but to himself. Today, we will more dangerous.
Yeah, before we go any further, that's the one thing I noticed about Exar double lightsaber. When you look at like certain lightsabers like Darth Maul, his hilt was a lot longer and easier to grab, but for him, it looks like it's only long enough just for one hand.
Dangerous, not only to his enemies, but to himself. Today, we will be documenting Exar. Before he ever fell to the dark side, Exar was already terrifying. A Jedi prodigy trained under Master Vodo Siosk Boss, a legendary duelist in his own right who wielded only a Force-imbued wooden staff. And yet, even he could not rein in Exar. At the Jedi Temple, Exar was undefeated, unmatched, a phenomenon with the blade, a mind filled with ambition, arrogance, and fire. In the expanded lore, duelists like Ulic Qel-Droma, whose own combat feats are staggering, are praised not for defeating Exar, but Ulic is praised for just surviving him. And this was before the Sith, before all of the forbidden knowledge, before alchemy, before the dark side truly took hold, before he became the Dark Lord. Even then, Exar was rewriting the art of lightsaber combat. He rediscovered the schematics for the double-bladed lightsaber in an ancient, long-lost Sith holocron. but instead of
Oh, so
replicating
that's where it
it,
came
he
from.
redefined it. He shortened the hilt, making the saber faster, more unstable, and infinitely more difficult to control. It was a weapon so lethal, so impractical, that even the Sith called it insane. But Exar, he didn't care, because the only thing more dangerous than the weapon was the man holding it. Exar Kun wasn't just
Well, he's right.
powerful, he was the definition of skill issue. Even the ancient Sith who came before him, brutal warlords like Tulak Horde and the Massassi Swordmasters wielded double-bladed warblades, primitive but deadly precursors to the modern saber staff. They were massive,
There he is,
2-meter
Darth
long
Maul.
metal weapons, less finesse, more obliteration. And yet, even they understood the danger of putting 2 blades on a single hilt. The balance, the rotational chaos, the self-harm risk. These were weapons of destruction, not precision. But Exar Kun, he saw opportunity in that chaos. He saw a narrow window, a window to become something greater. A margin of error so thin that even most Sith Lords wouldn't dare touch it. And he dove.
I still find it really cool that his master only wields a force-imbued wooden staff and it can withstand a lightsaber. But on top of that, what he mentioned about like shortening the hilt to only one hand, and even the Sith considers this like version of the weapon insane, but it's a lot harder to control. But if the fact that Exar Kun is able to control that weapon, able to wield it, that displays his focus, his control, and also his mentality of like lightsaber combat. So if he's able to wield a weapon that dangerous and that risky, then there's no surprise why he's one of the greatest duelists.
In head first. When Exar discovered the Sith schematics of the double-bladed lightsaber, he didn't just recreate the design, he optimized it. He shortened the hilt, reduced the reach, increased the spin. He took a weapon already seen as unstable and dangerous, and made it tighter, faster, and more volatile. But why? Because Exar Kun was so utterly confident in his control, so sure in his dominance that he believed the weapon's greatest flaws would not apply to him. Most duelists fear losing control of the second blade, but Exar turned that second blade into a dance partner. He spun his weapon through his fingers with the grace of a Makashi master, precise, elegant, deliberate. But when the moment called for it, he shifted instantly into the brutal, overpowering strikes of Form 5 Gem So. Overwhelming strength, counterattacks designed to dominate a duel. And perhaps most frightening of all, Exar mastered defense with the saber staff. Many consider defense to be the double-bladed lightsaber's greatest weakness. It's hard to block incoming blows without risking the second blade slashing behind you. Your own weapon becomes
Makes
your
sense.
greatest threat at that moment. But Exar Kun solved this problem. He made it work. He turned a flaw into a fortress. His style was terrifying because it wasn't just raw aggression, it was calculated chaos. An unholy fusion of Makashi's elegance, Gemso's brutality, and a devastating hybridized variant of Nyman, Form 6. Nyman is the diplomat's form and the monster's mask. Form.
So his is Form 6. Interesting. Oh, there's Mace Windu's Fapad. Soresu. I think that's that's Obi-Wan if I remember correctly. Form 2, I think that's Anakin or Count Dooku if I remember correctly. But either way.
Nyman is the diplomat's form and the monster's mask. To understand Exar's martial philosophy, you have to understand what Nyman is. Form 6 Nyman, often called the diplomat's form, was not designed for mastery of any one field. It was a jack-of-all-trades style.
Wait, I want to read that. So Form 6 Nyman balances the emphasis of other forms with overall moderation. Through Form 6, a Jedi may achieve true harmony and justice without resorting to the rule of power. Well, Exar Kun definitely turned that around.
Blending bits of Forms 1 through 5 into a balanced, easy-to-learn form. It emphasized moderation, fluidity, and for many Jedi, it was the perfect form for peacekeepers. Jedi who weren't dedicated duelists, but those who still needed to defend themselves when diplomacy would fail. Nyman was about harmony. It included elements of force integration, using telekinesis, mind tricks mid-duel. But for most practitioners, it simply wasn't enough. It was not spectacular, not dominant. It was just that, enough. And that's why most masters of Nyman never made it into the GOAT conversation. In fact, it's nearly impossible. But for Exar Kun twisted Nyman. He took the adaptability and he weaponized it. He didn't just use telekinesis in combat, he chained it into his offense. He broke defenses with force-enhanced strikes, and seamlessly blended blade and mind into a singular force. Exar turned a form meant for restraint into an apex predator's toolkit. While the Jedi used Nyman to end fights quickly and peacefully, Exar Kun used it to toy with his enemy, to overwhelm them with a style that they could not read. He mixed timing, stance shifts, and momentum in ways that made him nearly impossible to counter. For the Jedi, Nyman represented control, balance, versatility. It was a form of peace. But for the Sith, in Exar Kun's hands, it became something else entirely. The ultimate instrument of adaptation and destruction, a toolbox from which he could borrow every style and break every rule. Exar Kun didn't choose between power and grace, he chose both. And that's what makes him one of the most terrifying duelists in Star Wars history. Not because he was strong, but because he made every single part of his martial philosophy a reflection of his own arrogance and his own brilliance. His style told you everything you needed to know. I am Exar Kun, and I will not lose. But
So basically, he created a more improved version of Form 6 Nyman, but it sounds like by improving it, he took like some forms and some teachings from every single form and created like his own hybrid of Form 6. So, man, no wonder. Because what I always remember from Exar Kun, the first thing I learned about him was he was always ambitious when it comes to learning and improving. So that's what I really find fascinating with him. He doesn't just like learn and just like goes along with it. He learns, but he also finds ways to improve upon it and also make it better.
let's fast forward. Thousands of years after Exar Kun's fall, long after the Great Sith War, long after his spirit was entombed in a corrupted Jedi temple on Yavin 4, his influence still had not faded. And here's the thing. In the Darth Plagueis novel, when Plagueis sees that Maul has constructed a double-bladed lightsaber, he doesn't call it a saber staff. He doesn't refer to it as some genetic Sith design. Darth Plagueis calls it the weapon of Exar Kun. Let that sink in. This is Darth Plagueis that we're talking about. A Sith Lord so arrogant, so cerebral that he dismissed nearly every other Sith in history, even more so than Sidious would. Plagueis had zero time for the ancient spirits. Where Palpatine was obsessed with uncovering tombs, temples, and forgotten rituals, Plagueis simply didn't care. He didn't believe in honoring ghosts. He didn't believe in worshipping ruins. To him, most of the old Sith Lords were failures, dead and buried. Their empires crumbled, gone. But Exar Kun, that was a different story. Even Darth Plagueis had to acknowledge that name. He was impressed that Maul had even attempted to construct a saber staff in the style of Exar's. Not the shorter hilt version of Exar himself, but Maul's was longer, a bit more traditional. But still, the fact that Maul dared to wield that kind of weapon in live combat, Plagueis saw that, and immediately thought Exar. This tells us everything. Because if you lined up a room full of Rule of Two Sith Lords, Plagueis, Sidious, Vader, Bane, Zana, and you asked them to pick the greatest duelist, not including themselves of course, there is a very good chance that you would hear the same name whispered more than once.
Well, look at that armor.
Exar Kun. Why? Because Exar didn't just use the double-bladed lightsaber, he perfected it. He took something unstable and turned it into a weapon of control, and then he used that weapon to brutalize his master, cutting down Voto Sios Boss down in front of the entire Jedi Council and the Republic. This was his moment, the duel that marked the end of his time as a Jedi, and the beginning of a reign as the Dark Lord. And here's the thing that gets overlooked way too often. This version of Exar Kun, this monster that no one could touch in a duel, he hadn't even scratched the surface of Sith knowledge yet. He hadn't even begun. He was already the best duelist of his era, unquestioned, uncontested, before he fell to the dark side, before he made pacts with Sith spirits, before he studied sorcery, alchemy, and soul manipulation. Exar Kun wasn't built by the dark side. He brought that power with him. The darkness just gave him permission to become something more. But now let's talk more about Form 6, and let's just be blunt. Form 6 is universally considered the weakest lightsaber form in lore. That's what many exceptional duelists have said, including the likes of Anakin and Dooku. It's the jack-of-all-trades style, a hybrid pieced together from the other forms, designed to be practical, accessible, and moderate. And that's the problem. It's too balanced. It's too safe. It doesn't specialize in anything. It's not as defensive as Sarisu, not as aggressive as Gemso, not as elegant as Makashi, not as unrelenting as Juyo. In theory, it gives you a little bit of everything, but in practice, it gives you not enough of anything. A shocking number of Jedi who relied on Nyman, especially during the first Battle of Geonosis, did not make it out alive. Because while Form 6 may have worked in a diplomatic standoff and low-stakes missions, it collapsed in the total chaos of war. These Jedi were facing blasters, monsters, and Sith-level threats, and their form just simply couldn't keep up with it. They weren't prepared, and it showed. But here's the real twist. Exar Kun also used a hybridized, aggressive variant of Form 6, and when you watch the way that he fought, the dominance, the fluidity, the violence, you almost have to reframe the entire reputation of Form 6 entirely. There is a truth that needs to be revealed here. Exar Kun didn't default to Nyman. He didn't fall back to it as a compromise. He didn't use it because he couldn't master other forms. He used it because he already had. Exar Kun wasn't patching together parts of other forms out of necessity. He was selecting them, curating them, integrating them as a composer pulling from a full orchestra. He was already a master of Makashi, already a master of Sarisu, already a master of Gemso, Ataru, Xian. And Nyman in his hands wasn't a balanced form, it was his platform for the GOAT debate. A container into which he poured everything, and he made it
mastered
seamless.
every form.
He wielded the saber staff with the grace of a Form 2 stylist. He overwhelmed his enemies with Gemso's brute force. He flipped tempo mid-fight like someone of Form 7 would use, dancing on the edge of madness. In truth, calling Exar Kun a master of Nyman doesn't do him justice. It's technically accurate, yes, but it undersells the truth. Because Exar Kun wasn't a master of a lightsaber form. He was a master of the lightsaber. Every stance, every rhythm, every flaw, every strength, including Form 7. Because when you look at the ferocity behind his style, the pressure he applied in combat, the way he has weaponized chaos, there are clear elements of Form 7. And that's why putting a label on his form is unfitting, limiting. He wasn't a Form 6 duelist, he was the duelist, the blueprint, the standard. He didn't elevate Nyman, he transcended it. And in doing so, he shattered the ceiling of what lightsaber combat could be. But here's where things get very ugly. Because being a master of the lightsaber, being in the GOAT conversation, isn't just about elegance or a textbook form. It's about what you do with that power. And in the case of Exar Kun, he did what every true Sith Lord would do. He took it and he cheated. He exploited. He broke the rules of combat the same way he broke the rules of the Jedi, unapologetically. And that's what made him so dangerous, so iconic. He is undeniably Sith. You see, Exar Kun wasn't just innovative, he was manipulative. He didn't just adapt, he corrupted the fight itself. He was famous for using technical tricks that would have made traditional duelists recoil. His double-bladed lightsaber wasn't just a weapon, it was a trap. Exar Kun rigged it with hidden switches. One blade could reactivate and deactivate mid-spin, catching opponents off guard as they swung to block a blade that was no longer there. And just as quickly, the other would ignite. He would then shorten one end mid-duel, forcing his enemy to overextend, then lengthen it again, making the next blow land twice as hard.
That is amazing. So his basically lightsaber is just as adaptive and also easy to like I don't want to say easy, just like really fast to like react and control, just like him. So no wonder he's able to do all this, because it's even showing a demonstration here, a lightsaber slash, but if he switches off and this guy misses and swings, he'll be off balance, and then you're pretty much done.
Hilt was his playground, and he controlled every inch of it. Imagine fighting someone with a spinning dual-bladed laser sword that changes its length, shuts itself off, turns itself back on, and is wielded by a man who's smarter, faster, and more brutal than you are. That is what it was like to face Exar. He didn't believe in a fair fight. He didn't duel to test his skill, he dueled to win. And while the Jedi called this dishonorable, Exar saw it as what it truly was: power. This is what the Sith was to him. The part that understood that domination wasn't about rules, it was about results. He weaponized unpredictability. He played with rhythm, tempo, psychology. He wore his opponents down not just physically but mentally, before the first blade ever clashed. And yet, here is the real tragedy of it all. Here's the cold truth that makes his legacy more chilling. Even with all of those tools, even with all the tricks and the raw power, no one ever pushed Exar Kun to his limit. Not really, not in his prime. There was no grand duel where Exar Kun was tested and barely emerged. There was no equal rising up to challenge him at the height of his power. Because by the time Exar truly came into his own, after he shattered his master, after he claimed the title of Dark Lord, after he conquered Sith magic, alchemy, and spirit manipulation, there was no one left who could touch him in a duel. So he turned his ambition towards something else. Not the blade, not the war, but to eternity. Exar Kun didn't die in a lightsaber duel. He didn't fall to another master of the Force. He tried to cheat death itself. Because for someone
Just like
like
the Emperor.
Exar, someone
Sith
who had
Emperor, I
already
mean.
conquered the battlefield, the only enemy left was mortality. And that tells you everything. He didn't go out swinging. He went out trying to become something more. Because the blade was never the ceiling. It was already conquered. With all of that said though, any good GOAT debate needs a counter, because no matter how dominant, how skilled, or how terrifying a duelist is, there is always room for criticism. Always someone ready to say, yeah, but. And Exar Kun, yes, it's true, there are a few buts. Let's begin with the obvious. Some people say that Exar Kun was a cheater, not in the childish sense, but in the Sith sense. He didn't just break the rules of lightsaber combat, he rewrote them. One of the most controversial techniques associated with his style is what is called Trakata. Trakata is a method where a duelist deactivates their blade mid-fight, then reactivates it in order to land a killing strike. It's deceptive, it's brilliant, it's lethal. Considered by many Jedi to be one of the most disgraceful things a lightsaber duelist can do. Because it's not about the form, it's not about mastery, it's about catching your enemy off guard, exploiting their expectations, turning the nobility of a blade into a sleight of hand trick. As a Jedi, it is an unforgivable betrayal of what the weapon means. But Exar didn't care. He used Trakata not just sparingly, but as a part of his regular flow.
So what I see right now with like the disagreements with the Jedi and Exar Kun is Exar Kun just doesn't is going like, this is a weapon that can accomplish so much more, not just control, but to win battles and things like that. So why are we putting limits on there? Because the Jedi are like putting limits on how it's supposed to be used, how it should be wielded, how to win fights, how to fight in general. So Exar Kun just like disagreed with all that. If it was a tournament, or like, you know, there's referees, then I do understand. But if it's a fight for survival, fight for victory, fight to win and stay alive, then I'm with Exar Kun.
Engaging one blade, flipping the hilt, reigniting it behind your guard, changing blade lengths mid-swing, killing you with rhythm breaks instead of force. It was all deliberate, all a part of the same philosophy, to win no matter what. So yes, Exar was a genius, but he was also a rule breaker, and that brings us to his biggest weakness, not what he lacked, but who he lacked. Because the greatest tragedy of Exar Kun's story is that no one in his era could challenge him. There was no final dramatic duel, no worthy rival rising up to test the full extent of his abilities, no legendary showdown where Exar left it all on the table. The closest we ever get was Ulic Qel-Droma, and even that ended in stalemate, a draw between two rising stars before either of them reached their true potential, and that was it. That was the last time Exar Kun ever faced anyone who could meet him for the blade, because after that he only grew stronger, faster, more unhinged, and more dangerous. No one came close, so here's the honest question that we have to ask. What if Exar Kun peaked in an era where there were no Yodas, no Windus, no Anakins? What if he dominated not because he was truly untouchable, but because there wasn't anyone else around to stop him? It's not a knock on his skill, it's just the reality of timing. Imagine if you dropped Exar Kun into the Clone Wars, pitted him against Mace Windu's Vaapad.
Dude, if he was in the Clone Wars, he would have overpowered Count Dooku easy. And Yoda, I mean, because he could probably just walk into the Jedi Temple and like literally taking out everyone. Because if he's able to adapt and use so many different forms, lightsaber forms, and he's able to manipulate his lightsaber at that level, then no one can win against him. Not even Sidious. I'm willing to bet that Darth Sidious won't even stand against him either.
Or Anakin's raw aggression, or Yoda's mastery of Form 4 over 900 years. Maybe then we'd finally see where Exar Kun's ceiling was. But that's the tragedy, isn't it? We never got to see him bleed. We never got to see him desperate. We never got to see him really pushed. He didn't fall in a blaze of glory. He didn't get bested by any warrior. He tried to cheat death, because in his mind, he had already beaten everything else. But if we're being honest, that whole argument about Exar never being tested, it's a little flimsy. Because how do you fault someone for not being challenged when no one alive was ever even close? You don't blame gravity for keeping things on the ground, you don't criticize a mountain for being too tall to climb, and you don't question Exar Kun for standing alone when he defined the peak. Because Exar didn't just win, he changed the game. He didn't need opponents to validate him, because the lightsaber was his opponent, and he beat it. He deconstructed it, redefined it, rebuilt it from the hilt up, pushed its mechanics to their limit, mastered every style, wrote new ones. It wasn't enough for Exar to be the best. He had to be as good as it was possible to be, as good as his body, mind, and sensitivity would allow, until he stood at the mountaintop and realized there was nothing left to conquer. He didn't stop dueling because he lost. He stopped because the lightsaber had nothing more to offer. And that's why Exar Kun may not be just a contender, but the contender. The one at the center of the GOAT debate. Not because he was challenged, but because he stood in an era where no one could. He was the peak. He was the final boss. The rule breaker, the architect, the duelist who fought like a warlord and thought as a scholar. And even if you don't think he's the GOAT, you have to admit that he did set the bar. But my friends, Exar is just the beginning, because if we're talking about GOATs, then there are others who stand shoulder to shoulder with his legend. Luke Skywalker redefined lightsaber combat in a new era, not by mastering the old ways, but by forging a new path. He blended forms, instincts, and compassion into something completely unique. Luke wasn't a warrior, he was a reflection of balance itself. Then there was Vader, the Jedi killer, the embodiment of fear. The monster who built what may be the perfect form for killing Jedi. Heavy, impenetrable, suffocating. Darth Vader didn't duel, he hunted. And Yoda, among the Jedi, no name rang louder for nearly 900 years. The Grand Master, the Whirlwind, the
Yeah, I mean, the first time I ever saw Yoda fight against Count Dooku at the end of episode 2, I was amazed. I mean, it caught me off guard. Like, I didn't think he was capable of doing that. You just see this like little green alien walking in with the walking stick, like he's crippled, and then he pulled out the lightsaber, and it's like his whole body just healed up.
Duelist who remained unbeaten for centuries. He wasn't just skilled, he was the standard. And then you have the monsters of the ancient world. Tulak Horde, the Sith's dueling god. His feats are so absurd that fans have questioned whether or not they are even real or valid. The only explanation for exaggeration is that his actual accomplishments were just that unbelievable. That is the level that we're talking about in the GOAT debate. The top shelf, the final tier, the best to ever touch the blade. So thank you for watching, and we would love to hear your thoughts. Where does Exar Kun rank in your eyes? Is he the GOAT? Was he close?
For me,
yes. Is he shaped more by myth than actual merit? Let us know your thoughts down below. Is Exar the GOAT? Because when it comes to the blade, no debate will ever cut deeper. And we're just getting started. Thank you for visiting the channel, fellow lore junkies and scholars of the Force. Exar Kun may have mastered the blade, but the greatest duelist of all time has not been settled. Hit the subscribe button and stay locked in, for the war for the GOAT has just begun.
Now that was a really great video. I really like that. Mostly because I have, like I said, I love Exar Kun. His story is amazing, but also on top of that, I did not know that. I didn't know what lightsaber form he took to, and on top of that, I didn't know he managed to like master basically every single form. But however, his foundation of that was Form 6, Nyman, and I almost forgot the name of the form. But what really surprised me was his ability to manipulate the lightsaber as well, switching it on and off or shortening the length of it, so that way if someone's like swinging the lightsaber, they're not hitting the blade, they're hitting nothing but air, but it throws them off balance because they're putting so much weight into that swing. So that gives so basically Exar Kun just staggers them, and he sees an opening for a killing blow or maybe like a severe blow, anything like that. So that's what I really like about Exar Kun. And yeah, what I really like about what Stupendous Wave said was his greatest opponents were not like the ones that he was fighting against, it was the lightsaber that he was wielding. Because the lightsaber he was wielding, as mentioned in the video, the Sith called it insane as well. But he managed to master it so well then that means he pretty much mastered every single opponent as well. But Exar-kun, he's amazing. I really like him, but I really wondered if he somehow came back to like the prequel or the sequel time, like fighting against Darth Vader, the Emperor, like Palpatine, Count Dooku, Yoda, Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan, then in my opinion, my money's on Exar-kun, because there's no way they're gonna win against him. So that's what I really like about it. And ooh, there's another video by Stupendous Wave, the most deranged Sith Lord you never heard of, by the name of Darth Ruin. I'll put that on my list. But either way, this was really great, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, because I really did. I learned a lot more about Exar-kun, many things that I did not know, actually. So besides that, that's all I got, guys. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that notification bell so you know when I drop another video. And also shout out to all my members, subscribers, viewers. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for your support, guys. I really do appreciate it. So without anything else, see you guys next time.